You can come if you want. But it'd be better if you didn't, my mom said about the trip. I just nodded and didn't go. I also didn't send the $2,100 monthly transfer I'd been covering for my brother. 3 weeks later they showed up at my door furious and then. So last Tuesday my brother called me crying. Not like sad crying, like angry crying. The kind where someone's voice shakes and they can barely get words out. He said, "Jolene, what did you do?" And honestly, I smiled. Actually smiled. Because for the first time in 27 years, someone in my family finally felt what it's like to be blindsided. But let me back up because you need the full picture to understand why I did what I did. And trust me, by the end of this you're either going to think I'm a genius or a monster. Maybe both. My name is Jolene. I'm 31, I live in Columbus, Ohio, and I work as a senior analyst at a logistics company. I'm not rich, but I do okay. Better than okay, actually. I worked my way through college, got my degree, climbed my way up, and now I make enough to live comfortably and, this is the important part, enough that my family started treating me like a walking ATM about 4 years ago. It started small. My mom, Patrice, would call and say things like, "Oh, the electric bill was a little high this month, could you just?" Then my dad, Gene, would casually mention that his truck needed new tires. And then my younger brother, Colton, sweet, charming, absolutely useless Colton, he moved to Austin for some kind of startup idea that never launched and suddenly couldn't make rent. And who did everyone look at? Me. Now let me be clear, I love my family. I do. But loving someone and being their personal bank account are two very different things. You'd agree with that, right? So here's how the arrangement started. About 2 years ago, Colton called me in a panic. His roommate had bailed, his startup was pivoting, which is just a fancy word for failing, and he was about to get evicted. He was literally crying on the phone. And my mom called me separately. She said, "Jolene, he's your brother. He's your blood. You can't let him end up on the street." So I started covering his rent. $2,100 a month. Every single month. That's not pocket change. That's a second mortgage. But I did it because I thought it was temporary. Colton told me he'd pay me back. He said 6 months tops. That was 2 years ago. 2 years and I haven't seen a dime back. And here's the thing that really gets me. Nobody in my family ever once said thank you. Not once. Not Colton, not my mom, not my dad. It was just expected. Like I owed them something for having the audacity to be financially stable. But I swallowed it. I kept paying. Because that's what you do when you're the responsible one in the family, right? You just keep giving until there's nothing left. No. Every year my parents plan a big family trip. It's a whole thing. Last year it was Myrtle Beach. The year before, Gatlinburg. This year they were planning a week in Destin, Florida. Nice rental house right on the water. The whole family was invited. My parents, Colton, my Aunt Sherry, Uncle Dale, their kids Madison and Tyler. It was supposed to be this big, beautiful reunion. And I was excited. Genuinely excited. I'd been working nonstop for months, and the idea of just sitting on a beach with my toes in the sand sounded like heaven. So I called my mom to talk logistics. I asked when we were leaving whether I should book my own flight or if we were carpooling what I should bring. Normal stuff. And there was this pause. You know the kind where you can physically feel someone choosing their words carefully. Then she said it. "Well, Jolene, you can come if you want. But it'd be better if you didn't." I actually pulled the phone away from my ear and looked at it. Like the phone itself had betrayed me. I said, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "Well, you know Colton's been having a hard time and he really needs this trip to decompress. And you two have been a little tense lately, and I just think it might be better for everyone if you sat this one out. We don't want any drama. Let me tell you something. There was no tension between me and Colton. None. I had been nothing but generous, nothing but supportive. The only tension was that a month before, I had casually asked Colton when he planned to start contributing to his own rent again, and apparently that made him uncomfortable. So asking my brother to maybe, possibly, someday pay his own bills, that was the drama they wanted to avoid. Do you see what I'm dealing with here? I didn't argue with my mom. I didn't yell. I just said, "Okay. That's it." One word. And she sounded so relieved, like she'd been dreading that conversation. She said, "I knew you'd understand, honey. You're always so mature about these things." Right. That's what they call it when you're the one who always gets the short end and doesn't complain. I hung up and I sat on my couch for a long time. Like a really long time. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even angry yet. I was just, still. You know that feeling when something clicks in your brain and suddenly everything looks different? Like you've been looking at a picture upside down your whole life and someone finally flipped it right side up? That's what happened. I realized something. I was paying $2,100 a month so that my brother could live comfortably in Austin, go out with his friends, post beach selfies on Instagram, while my own family was telling me I wasn't welcome on the family vacation. I was literally funding his lifestyle while being excluded from the family. Can we just sit with that for a second? Because I need you to really feel how insane that is. So what do you think I did? I'll tell you exactly what I did. I picked up my phone, opened my banking app, and canceled the automatic transfer to Colton's landlord. Done. Just like that. 2 taps and $2,100 a month was back in my pocket. Now, some of you might be thinking, Jolene, that's cold. Maybe it is. But let me ask you, if someone told you that your presence was inconvenient, that you should sit out the family vacation so your brother could decompress, while you were literally keeping a roof over his head, what would you do? Because I think you'd do exactly what I did. The trip was in 3 weeks. I knew exactly what was going to happen. Colton's rent was due on the 1st. The trip was the 2nd week of the month, which meant that right around the time my family was supposed to be lounging on white sand in Destin, Colton was going to get a very unpleasant email from his landlord. And I was not going to feel bad about it. Now here's the thing about doing something like this. The first few days you feel powerful. You feel like you finally stood up for yourself. But then around day 4 or 5 the guilt starts creeping in. Not because you were wrong but because your whole life, you've been trained to feel guilty whenever you put yourself first. Anyone else know that feeling? My best friend Raylan, she was the one who kept me grounded. We've been close since college and she's the kind of person who will look you dead in the eye and say, no, you're not crazy. They are. I needed that. I needed someone outside the family to tell me that what I was feeling was valid. I told Raylan everything. The phone call, the cancellation, the trip. And she just nodded and said, good. You should have done it a year ago. The first week went by quietly. Nobody called me. Nobody texted. Which honestly told me everything I needed to know. When I was useful, my phone rang off the hook. When I wasn't, silence. Then the 1st of the month came. And I waited. 2 days later, Colton called. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. Then he texted, hey, did something happen with the transfer? My landlord says rent wasn't paid. I wrote back one line, yeah, I canceled it. And then my phone absolutely exploded. I'm going to tell you what happened when my family found out. Because what Colton did next, and what my parents did after that, I genuinely did not see coming. And if you think the trip drama was bad, just wait. Because it got so much worse before it got better. Colton didn't even wait an hour. He screenshot my text and sent it straight to the family group chat. The one I was still in, by the way. He didn't even have the decency to crop out my message. Just threw it in there raw with the caption, can someone explain why Jolene is trying to make me homeless? Homeless. That was the word he used. Like I hadn't been paying his rent for 2 years while he figured out his life. Like I was some villain who just decided to ruin him for fun. And the responses started rolling in immediately. My mom, Jolene, what is this about? Call me right now. My dad, this is unacceptable. You made a commitment. My Aunt Sherry, who honestly had no business being involved. Family doesn't do this to family. Not a single person asked why I did it. Not one. Nobody said, hey, what happened? Is everything okay? They just assumed I had lost my mind. Because apparently the only explanation for me stopping a voluntary payment was that something was wrong with me. You ever notice how that works? When you give and give, nobody questions it. But the second you stop, suddenly you're the problem. I didn't respond to the group chat. I muted it and put my phone face down on the counter. Raylan came over that night with takeout and a bottle of wine, and she said something I'll never forget. She said, the fact that they're angry at you and not embarrassed for themselves tells you everything. And she was right. My brother was a grown man, 28 years old, and his first instinct when rent didn't magically appear in his landlord's account was to tattle to mommy and daddy. Not to figure it out. Not to get a job. To tattle. Think about that for a second. The next morning my mom called. I answered this time because honestly I was ready. I'd had my wine, I'd had my sleep, and I was calm. Dangerously calm. She started with, Jolene Marie, I raised you better than this. I said, better than what, Mom? Better than standing up for myself. And she said, and I quote, you know your brother is in a fragile place right now. He's trying to find himself. You can't just pull the rug out from under him. Finding himself. At 28. With my money. On my dime. While I'm not invited to the family trip. I said, Mom, you told me not to come to Destin. You said it would be better if I didn't come. Do you remember that? Silence. You told me that my being there would be a problem. That Colton needed to decompress. From what, exactly? From the stress of me paying his bills. More silence. Then she did what she always does. She deflected. That has nothing to do with this, Jolene. The trip and the rent are 2 separate things. Are they, though? Are they really? Because from where I was standing, they were very much the same thing. I was good enough to fund the family but not good enough to be part of it. Would you accept that? I told her. I'm done paying Colton's rent. He's a grown adult. If he needs help, he can ask me himself, respectfully, and we can have a conversation. But I'm not going to be the family ATM while also being the family outcast. She hung up on me. My dad called 20 minutes later. Gene is a quieter man, usually lets my mom do the talking. But when he does speak up, he goes straight for the guilt. He said, "Your mother is very upset. I hope you're happy." I said, "I'm not happy, Dad. I haven't been happy in a long time. And nobody seemed to care about that until my money stopped flowing." He didn't have a response to that. He just said, "You need to fix this," and hung up. Fix it. Like I was the one who broke something. For the next week, I didn't hear from anyone except through passive-aggressive posts in the family group chat. My mom shared a quote that said, "Real family sticks together through thick and thin." Colton posted a photo of himself looking sad with the caption, "When the people you trust let you down." My Aunt Sherry, again not her business, commented with 3 crying emojis and a heart. Meanwhile, I went to work. I cooked dinner. I went to the gym. I watched a really good documentary about deep-sea creatures. Life went on. And honestly, having that extra $2,100 in my account felt incredible. I'm not going to pretend it didn't. Raylan kept checking in. She texted me things like, "Still standing," and I'd say, "Still standing." She was my rock during all of this, and I genuinely don't know what I would have done without her. Then came the trip. They actually went. They went to Destin without me, and the whole time my mom was posting photos on Facebook like everything was perfect. Big smiles, matching swimsuits, sunset dinners. Colton was in every photo, grinning like he didn't have a care in the world. My cousin Madison was there, Tyler was there, Aunt Sherry and Uncle Dale. The whole crew. Everyone except me. And under one of the photos, a group shot on the beach, my mom wrote, "Nothing matters more than family." I stared at that caption for a long time. Then I liked it. Just a plain, simple like. No comment. Because sometimes the pettiest thing you can do is act like you're completely unbothered. But I wasn't unbothered. I want to be honest with you about that. It hurt. Seeing them all together, knowing I was specifically asked not to come. That stung. Even when you know you did the right thing, it doesn't always feel good. The trip ended on a Sunday. The following Tuesday, exactly 3 weeks after I canceled the transfer, my doorbell rang. It was all 3 of them. My mom, my dad, and Colton. Standing on my porch in Columbus, Ohio like some kind of intervention team. My mom had her arms crossed. My dad had his hands in his pockets. And Colton. Colton was standing slightly behind them like a kid who got sent to the principal's office but brought his parents as backup. I opened the door and said, "Can I help you?" My mom pushed past me. Literally pushed past me into my own home and said, "We need to talk about this situation because it's gotten out of hand." I closed the door and leaned against it. I didn't sit down. I didn't offer them water. I just stood there and waited. My dad started. "Jolene, your brother is about to be evicted. His landlord gave him a 30-day notice. Do you understand how serious this is?" I said, "I do." "Does Colton?" Colton finally spoke. And this is the part that really got me. He said, "I thought you cared about me. Not thank you for 2 years of rent. Not, I'm sorry I never paid you back. Not, I understand why you're upset. Just, I thought you cared about me." Like I owed him my money as proof of love. I looked at him and said, "Colton, I have cared about you your entire life. I have given you more money than most people make in a year. And in return, I wasn't even invited on the family trip. So don't stand in my house and question whether I care." That's when my mom lost it. She started yelling. In my home. In my living room. She said I was selfish, that I was tearing the family apart, that I had always been difficult, and this was just the latest example. She brought up things from years ago. The time I didn't come home for Thanksgiving in 2019, the time I disagreed with her about my cousin Madison's wedding venue. Random stuff that had nothing to do with anything. And my dad just stood there. He didn't stop her. He didn't say, "Patrice, calm down." He just watched. But here's the part that changed everything. Because what none of them realized was that I wasn't the only one who saw what happened next. And the person who walked in at the worst possible moment? That shifted everything in a direction none of us expected. I'll tell you exactly what happened, and honestly I still can't believe it played out the way it did. My mom was mid-sentence, finger pointed at me, voice at full volume, when my front door opened. I'd forgotten that I'd given a spare key to my cousin Madison a few months back when she was passing through Columbus for a work conference. She texted me that morning saying she wanted to drop by and return it, but with everything happening I completely forgot. Madison walked in holding a coffee and a little gift bag. She brought me a candle from Destin, if you can believe that, and she just froze. standing in my hallway watching her Aunt Patrice screaming at me in my own living room while Jean stood there like a statue and Colton hid behind both of them. Nobody moved for about 5 seconds. Felt like 5 hours. Then Madison said very quietly, "What is happening right now?" My mom spun around and immediately changed her tone. You know how some people can flip a switch like that? 1 second she's yelling about how I'm destroying the family, the next she's smiling and saying, "Oh Madison sweetie, we were just having a family discussion." A family discussion. That's what we're calling it. Madison looked at me. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. My face said everything. And Madison, bless this woman, she set down the coffee and the gift bag and said, "Aunt Patrice, I could hear you from the driveway. That's not a discussion." My mom tried to laugh it off. Oh, you know how families get. It's just emotions running high. But Madison wasn't having it. She looked at Colton and said, "What's going on? Seriously?" And Colton, who had barely said a word since the "I thought you cared about me" line, suddenly found his voice. He said, "Jolene cut me off. She was helping me with rent and she just stopped without warning." Madison turned to me. "Is that true?" I said, "It's true. I was paying $2,100 a month for his rent for 2 years. And then Mom told me not to come on the family trip because my presence might bother Colton. I decided that if I'm not family enough to go on vacation, I'm not family enough to pay his bills." Madison blinked. Then she looked at my mom and said, "You told her not to come to Destin?" My mom's face went red. Not angry red. Embarrassed red. Because here's the thing about my Aunt Sherry and my mom. They're sisters and Sherry talks to Madison about everything. But apparently nobody told Madison the real reason I wasn't in Destin. They told her I was too busy with work. Too busy with work. That was the official story. Madison pulled out her phone and called her mom right there in my living room. Put it on speaker. She said, "Mom, did you know that Aunt Patrice told Jolene not to come to Destin?" Aunt Sherry's voice came through crystal clear. "She what?" And that's when the real unraveling started. My mom tried to grab the phone. Actually tried to physically take it from Madison's hand. Madison stepped back and said, "No. We're talking about this." Aunt Sherry said, "Patrice, is that true? You told that girl she couldn't come?" My mom stuttered. She actually stuttered. She said, "It wasn't like that, Sherry. I just suggested that maybe it would be easier if..." "Easier for who?" Sherry cut her off. "That girl has been paying Colton's rent for how long? And you told her she wasn't welcome? Patrice, have you lost your mind?" I stood there listening to my aunt defend me, and I'm not going to lie. My eyes got wet. Because for 2 years I thought nobody saw what was happening. I thought everyone just accepted that I was the family workhorse who should give endlessly and expect nothing back. But Sherry saw it. The second she had the full picture, she saw it. My dad tried to intervene. He said, "This is between us and Jolene. It's not anyone else's business." And Madison, 24-year-old Madison who I used to babysit, looked my father dead in the eye and said, "Uncle Gene, if you're going to have this argument in Jolene's living room with the door unlocked, it became everyone's business." Honestly, I wanted to applaud. My mom sat down on my couch. She didn't ask permission. She just sat. And for the first time she looked small. Not angry. Not righteous. Just small. She put her hands in her lap and stared at the floor. Colton was standing by the window, arms crossed, looking like he wanted to disappear. And my dad was shifting his weight back and forth like he always does when he's uncomfortable. I pulled a chair from my dining table and sat across from my mom. I said, "Mom, I need you to hear me. Really hear me. Not as someone who's being difficult. Not as someone who's selfish. Just hear me." She didn't look up, but she nodded. I said, "For 2 years I have given this family everything I could. I have paid Colton's rent without missing a single month. I have sent money for Dad's truck, for your electric bills, for things I can't even remember anymore. And I did it because I love you. All of you. But somewhere along the way my love turned into an obligation. And when I couldn't give anything more, when I just wanted to show up as Jolene, not Jolene's wallet, you told me to stay home." My mom's chin started trembling. I said, "That broke something in me. I need you to know that." The room was completely silent. Even Sherry on the phone didn't say a word. Then Colton did something I genuinely did not expect. He sat down on the floor, right on my living room floor, and put his head in his hands. And he said, "I'm sorry." Not dramatically. Not performatively. Just quietly. Like it had been stuck in his throat for a long time and it finally fell out. He said, "I never should have let it go this long. You were helping me and I took it for granted. I told myself you were fine because you never complained. But that wasn't fair. None of this was fair to you." Do you know how long I had waited to hear those words? My dad sat down next to my mom. He didn't say anything for a while. Then he cleared his throat and said, I owe you an apology too, Jolene. I should have told your mother that what she said about the trip was wrong. I knew it was wrong when she said it. But I didn't speak up, and that's on me. My mom was crying now. Not the loud, dramatic kind. The quiet kind. The kind that comes from realizing you messed up in a way you can't undo with just words. She looked up at me and said, I don't know when I started treating you like you owed us something. But I did. And I'm ashamed of that. That word, ashamed, it hit me harder than anything else she could have said. Because my mom is proud. Stubborn. She doesn't admit fault easily. So hearing her say she was ashamed, I knew she meant it. Madison sat down next to me and put her hand on my knee. Sherry was still on the phone and she said, Jolene, honey, I'm sorry I didn't know. I should have asked why you weren't there instead of just believing what I was told. I wiped my face and said, It's okay, Aunt Sherry. You're here now. That matters. We sat in my living room for 3 hours that day. 3 hours of talking, crying, being honest in ways we'd never been before. Colton told me about how his startup failing made him feel like a failure, and instead of dealing with it, he just leaned on me because it was easier. My mom admitted that she'd been so focused on protecting Colton, the baby of the family, that she'd neglected me. My dad admitted he avoids conflict to a fault and that he let my mom make decisions that affected all of us without ever pushing back. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't some movie scene where everyone hugs and the music swells. It was messy and uncomfortable and honest. But it was real. After everyone left, I sat alone in my living room for a while. The candle Madison brought me was still in its little gift bag by the door. I opened it, sea salt and driftwood scent. I lit it and just sat there, smelling the ocean I never got to visit. In the weeks that followed, things started to shift. Colton got a job. An actual job. He's working in operations at a distribution center in Austin, and he told me last week he's been putting together a plan to pay me back. Not all at once, but month by month. I told him I wasn't going to hold him to it, but he insisted. He said, I need to do this. For me, not just for you. That meant more to me than the money ever could. My mom calls me every Sunday now. Not to ask for anything. Just to talk. She told me about a book she's reading. She asked about my job. She said she's proud of me. She'd never said that before. Not once in 31 years. And hearing it for the first time felt like standing in sunlight after a very long winter. My dad sent me a text last week. Just 4 words. I love you, kid. Gene is not a texter. He barely knows how to use his phone. So those 4 words. They might as well have been a novel. And Madison and I are closer than ever. She checks on me, I check on her. She said something the other day that stuck with me. She said, You taught me that it's okay to stop giving when giving starts hurting you. I'm going to remember that. I don't know if everything is perfect. I don't think families are supposed to be perfect. But we're talking now. Really talking. Not the surface level stuff, not the pass the salt kind of communication. The real kind. The kind where you say the hard thing because you know it matters. I'm not paying Colton's rent anymore. He's paying his own. And honestly, I think that's the best thing I ever did for him. Not because I saved money, though that's nice, but because I finally treated him like the adult he's supposed to be. And he rose to it. If you're out there right now dealing with something like this, a family that takes more than it gives, people who only value you for what you provide, I want you to know that it's okay to stop. It's okay to say, I love you, but this isn't working. It doesn't make you selfish. It makes you human. And sometimes the people who are hurting you don't even realize they're doing it. Sometimes they need the wake-up call. Sometimes they need you to cancel the transfer, to set the boundary, to stand in your own living room and say, this broke something in me. Because that's how healing starts. Not with silence. Not with giving more. With honesty. My name is Jolene. I'm 31. I live in Columbus, Ohio. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like my family actually sees me. Not my paycheck. Me. If this story meant something to you, I'd really love to hear about it. Drop a comment, tell me what you think. Whether you agree with what I did, whether you would have handled it differently, whether you've been through something similar. I read everything, and honestly, your words mean more than you know. If you enjoyed this, leave a like. It helps more than you think. And if something didn't land right, that's okay too. Tell me. I want to hear all of it. Thank you for sticking with me through this whole story. Truly, it means the world.